My name is Sophia, and I'm 28 years old. 3 months ago, I thought I knew exactly who I could trust in my family. I was wrong in ways that still make my hands shake when I think about it. It started with a phone call that changed everything. My grandmother's lawyer was on the line, his voice formal but kind. "Miss Thompson, I'm calling about your inheritance from Eleanor's estate." My breath caught in my throat. Grandma Eleanor had passed 6 months earlier, and while I knew she'd left me something, I never imagined the number he said next. $500,000. I had to sit down. The number felt surreal, like someone else's life suddenly colliding with mine. Grandma Eleanor had always been my anchor growing up. When my parents divorced messily when I was 12, she was the one who picked up the pieces. She taught me how to bake her famous apple pie. She listened to my teenage heartbreaks without judgment. She believed in me when I wanted to go to art school, even when everyone else called it impractical. "There's one small complication," the lawyer continued. "The funds were transferred to a family member for temporary management during probate. Your mother-in-law, Patricia Williams, should have the documentation ready for transfer." My mother-in-law, Patricia. I felt a strange knot form in my stomach, though I couldn't explain why. Patricia had always been complicated. She was the kind of woman who smiled while delivering cutting remarks. She had opinions about everything I did wrong as a wife to her precious son Marcus. But she was family now, and family helps family, right? When I called Patricia that evening, her voice was strangely tight. "Oh yes, dear. The inheritance. It's quite complicated with all the legal paperwork. These things take time. You know how lawyers are." Something in her tone made my artist's intuition flare up. The same instinct that helped me see when a painting wasn't quite right. Weeks passed, then months. Every time I asked Patricia about the inheritance, she had a new excuse. The lawyers were slow. The paperwork was delayed. The bank had questions. Marcus, my husband of 3 years, just shrugged it off. "Mom knows what she's doing, Soph. She handled Dad's estate perfectly." But I started paying attention to things I'd never noticed before. Patricia's suddenly expensive handbag collection, the new luxury car in their driveway, the casual mention of investing in some business venture. When I asked Marcus about it, he looked genuinely confused. "I don't know. Maybe Dad left more money than we thought." If you are watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you are viewing from. Before I tell you about this life-changing decision, hit like and subscribe to hear more real stories about family loyalty and betrayal that might just change how you see your own relationships. 3 months after that first phone call, I made a decision that would tear my family apart and rebuild it in ways I never expected. I decided to investigate my own mother-in-law. Not because I wanted to destroy my marriage or create family drama, but because something deep in my gut told me that Grandma Eleanor's final gift to me was disappearing into someone else's life. I started small. I began paying attention to conversations differently. I noticed how Patricia's stories about her finances changed depending on who was listening. I watched how she deflected every direct question about the inheritance with practiced precision. Most telling of all, I saw how uncomfortable she became whenever Grandma Eleanor's name came up in conversation. The woman who had raised the man I loved, who had welcomed me into her family with what I thought was genuine warmth, might be stealing from me. The inheritance wasn't just money. It was Grandma Eleanor's way of making sure I'd always be okay, that I'd have security and options she never had as a young woman. But proving it would mean risking everything I'd built with Marcus. It would mean potentially destroying his relationship with his mother. It would mean admitting that maybe I'd been naive about the people closest to me. As I sat in my small apartment that night, looking at the empty easel where I used to paint before financial stress killed my creativity, I realized something important. this wasn't just about money. This was about whether I was going to let someone take advantage of my trusting nature, or whether I was going to fight for what my grandmother wanted me to have. I had no idea how deep this rabbit hole would go. To understand how I ended up in this situation, you need to know about the family I married into. The Williams family looked perfect from the outside. They lived in a beautiful suburban house with manicured lawns and family photos that belonged in magazines. Marcus was the golden child, tall, successful in real estate, with an easy smile that had won me over during our college years. He genuinely believed his family was close-knit and supportive. Growing up, he never had to question anyone's motives because he'd never been given a reason to. His childhood was stable in ways mine never was. Patricia, my mother-in-law, was 53 and commanded attention in every room. She had perfectly styled silver hair and a wardrobe that whispered expensive taste. She volunteered at the local charity gala. She hosted book clubs and dinner parties. Everyone in their social circle respected her opinion and sought her advice. But I started noticing things during family dinners that made me uncomfortable. The way she'd make small comments about my clothes being interesting, or ask if I was still playing around with that art hobby. When Marcus wasn't listening, her smile would slip just slightly, revealing something cooler underneath. Marcus's father, Robert, was quieter, more reserved. He worked in finance and seemed to genuinely care about me, but he deferred to Patricia on all family decisions. Whatever makes Patricia happy was his standard response to any family planning discussion. Then there was Marcus's younger sister, Jessica, 25 and still finding her way in the world. She worked as a teacher and lived paycheck to paycheck, always stressed about money. What struck me as odd was how Patricia never offered to help Jessica financially, despite the family's apparent wealth. My own family dynamics were completely different. After my parents' divorce, money was always tight. My mom worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat. My dad disappeared into his new life and rarely sent child support. Grandma Eleanor was the stability in that chaos, the one person who made me feel valued and secure. When Grandma Eleanor got sick with cancer 2 years ago, I spent every free moment with her. Patricia seemed supportive during this time, even driving me to the hospital when Marcus was traveling for work. "Family takes care of family," she'd say, squeezing my hand in the hospital waiting room. But now I wondered if those hospital visits gave her information she shouldn't have had. Did she learn about the inheritance before I did? Did she position herself as the responsible family member who should handle financial matters? The more I thought about it, the more details started bothering me. Like how Patricia always knew exactly what to say to the lawyer when I'd tried to call him directly, or how she'd somehow become the primary contact for Grandma Eleanor's estate without me ever agreeing to that arrangement. Marcus truly had no idea any of this was happening. He trusted his mother completely and couldn't imagine her being anything less than honest. When I tried to express my concerns, he'd get defensive. "Mom's been handling family finances for decades, Soph. She knows what she's doing better than we do. Have you ever been in a situation where your instincts were screaming at you, but everyone around you acted like you were being paranoid?" That's exactly how I felt. I started questioning my own judgment, wondering if grief over Grandma Eleanor was making me see problems that didn't exist. But then I remembered something Grandma Eleanor told me during one of our last conversations. "Sophia, honey, you have good instincts about people. Don't let anyone convince you to ignore that little voice inside your head. It's kept me safe for 87 years. I realized I had 2 choices. I could stay quiet, keep peace in the family, and hope Patricia would eventually transfer the inheritance. Or I could investigate and risk discovering something that would change everything. The decision became easier when I calculated how much money I'd already lost by waiting. $500,000 could have paid off my student loans, helped Marcus and me buy a house, and given me the financial security to pursue my art career seriously. Every month that passed was another month of lost opportunities. I also thought about Jessica, struggling to make ends meet while her mother apparently had access to significant funds. If Patricia was willing to delay my inheritance indefinitely, what else might she be hiding from her own family? So I made a plan. I was going to find out exactly what Patricia Williams was doing with my grandmother's money. My investigation started innocently enough. I began with public records, something any citizen can access. What I found made my stomach drop to the floor. 3 months ago, right around the time Patricia should have received my inheritance, she'd filed paperwork to incorporate a new business, Williams Investment Solutions. She was listed as the sole proprietor and primary investor. The initial investment amount listed on the filing was exactly $500,000. My $500,000. I sat in my car outside the county office building, staring at the documents until the words blurred. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the papers. Patricia hadn't just delayed transferring my inheritance. She'd stolen it to start her own business. But I needed more proof before I could confront anyone. If I was wrong, I'd destroy my marriage and my relationship with Marcus's entire family. If I was right, well, that might happen anyway. I decided to reach out to Jessica. During our next coffee date, I carefully brought up family finances. "Do you ever worry about retirement?" I asked casually. "I mean, your parents seem so financially secure." Jessica laughed bitterly. "Secure? Sophia, I asked Mom for help with my car payment last month, and she told me I needed to learn financial responsibility. Meanwhile, she's shopping for designer furniture and talking about taking a cruise to Europe." "That seems inconsistent," I said carefully. "Everything about Mom's been inconsistent lately," Jessica continued. "She keeps mentioning this new business venture, but she won't tell anyone what it is. Dad asks questions, and she shuts him down. It's like she's got some secret life we're not allowed to know about." My heart was pounding. Jessica had noticed the same things I had, but from a different angle. "Have you asked her directly about the business?" "I tried once. She said it was complicated, and I wouldn't understand the financial aspects." Jessica's voice was frustrated. "I have a college degree, Soph. I'm not stupid, but she treats me like I'm still 12 years old whenever money comes up." After that conversation, I realized Patricia's behavior was affecting more people than just me. Jessica deserved to know if her mother was hiding significant assets while refusing to help her with basic expenses. I also started noticing changes in Robert, Marcus's father. He seemed more withdrawn during family dinners. When Patricia talked about her business investments, he'd get quiet and change the subject. One evening, I caught him staring at Patricia with an expression I couldn't quite read. Confusion, concern, suspicion. The breakthrough came when I decided to drive past the address listed for Williams Investment Solutions. It was Patricia's home address. She was running a business out of their house without Robert knowing the full extent of it. The mailbox had a separate slot marked WIS, and there was a small sign in the front window I'd never noticed before. But the real shock came when I saw Patricia's car in the driveway next to a vehicle I didn't recognize. Through the front window, I could see Patricia sitting at her dining room table with a man in a suit, papers spread between them. They were clearly conducting business. I parked down the street and waited. When the man left an hour later, I followed him to a downtown office building. The directory in the lobby showed his name was David Chen, and he worked for a financial planning firm that specialized in high-risk investments. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Grandma Eleanor's money being used for risky investments without my knowledge or consent. What if Patricia lost it all? What if her secret business failed and took my inheritance with it? But I also felt guilty for investigating my own family. Was I being paranoid? Was I letting grief and financial stress make me see malicious intent, where none existed? The next morning, Marcus noticed I was distracted. "You've been weird lately, Soph. Is everything okay?" His concern was genuine, which made everything harder. "I'm just stressed about money," I said, which was true enough. "Well, Christmas is coming up. Maybe being around family will help you relax." Christmas, the annual Williams family gathering, where everyone would be together in one place, where Patricia would play the perfect hostess while potentially hiding the truth about my inheritance from everyone, including her own husband and daughter. That's when I knew what I had to do. Christmas dinner at the Williams house was always an elaborate affair. Patricia spent weeks preparing, turning their dining room into something from a holiday magazine. This year felt different, though. I sat at that perfectly set table, watching Patricia play the gracious hostess, knowing what I knew. The entire family was there. Marcus, of course, completely oblivious to the tension I was feeling. Jessica had brought her new boyfriend, Dave, a sweet guy who seemed genuinely interested in getting to know everyone. Robert sat quietly at the head of the table, as usual. Patricia fluttered around, making sure everyone's glasses stayed full, and the conversation flowed smoothly. For most of the meal, everything seemed normal. We talked about Jessica's teaching job, Marcus's latest real estate deals, and Robert's upcoming retirement plans. But I noticed Patricia's reaction when Robert mentioned retirement. Her smile tightened, and she quickly changed the subject to dessert options. I'd planned this moment carefully. I waited until we were all relaxed, full of Patricia's famous prime rib and roasted vegetables. That's when I pulled out my phone and the documents I'd printed. "Patricia, I need to ask you something important," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "It's about my inheritance from Grandma Eleanor." The room went quiet. Marcus looked confused. Jessica stopped mid-conversation with Dave. Robert's attention snapped to me with sudden focus. Patricia's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "Of course, dear. What about it?" "Well, it's been 3 months since the lawyer contacted me about the $500,000. You said the paperwork was delayed, but I did some checking." I held up the incorporation documents. "Did you use my inheritance money to start Williams Investment Solutions?" The silence in that room was deafening. Patricia's face went through several expressions quickly. Surprise, then calculation, then something that looked almost like relief. Marcus was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. "Soph? What are you talking about? What $500,000? "The inheritance from my grandmother," I said, not taking my eyes off Patricia. "She left me $500,000, and it was supposed to be transferred to me 3 months ago through your mother." Robert slowly set down his wine glass. "Patricia, what is she talking about?" Jessica leaned forward, her eyes wide. "Mom, did you know about Sophia's inheritance?" Patricia straightened in her chair, and for a moment, I saw the woman she really was underneath all the perfect hostess performance. "This is hardly appropriate dinner conversation, Sophia." "Answer the question," Robert said quietly, but there was steel in his voice I'd never heard before. "Did you use money that belongs to Sophia for your business?" "It's more complicated than that," Patricia began, but I interrupted. "No, it's really not complicated at all. According to these public records, you incorporated a business with an initial investment of exactly $500,000 on the same day the lawyer says you received my inheritance funds for transfer." I spread the documents on the table between the Christmas china and crystal glasses. Dave, Jessica's boyfriend, looked like he wanted to disappear. Jessica looked horrified. Marcus looked like his entire world was shifting under his feet. "You Stole from Sophia? Jessica's voice was barely a whisper. I didn't steal anything, Patricia snapped, her composure finally cracking. I invested it. The money is still there, just growing instead of sitting in some savings account earning nothing. Sophia's young. She doesn't understand financial planning. That wasn't your decision to make, Robert said, and his voice was shaking with anger. That money wasn't yours to invest. How could you do this? How could I do this? Patricia's voice got louder. I've been managing this family's finances for 30 years. I've made us wealthy beyond what we ever dreamed. I saw an opportunity to make Sophia's inheritance grow, and I took it. Without telling me, I said, without my consent, without even letting me know the money existed until I called the lawyer myself. Marcus finally found his voice. Mom, please tell me this isn't true. Please tell me you didn't take Sophia's inheritance without permission. Patricia looked around the table at her family's faces, her husband's disappointment, her daughter's shock, her son's horror, and my barely contained fury. The perfect Christmas dinner was in ruins, and there was no going back. I was going to tell you all eventually, she said finally, after the business was profitable, after I could show you how much I'd made us all. Us? I stood up, my chair, scraping against the hardwood floor. There is no us in this, Patricia. That was my grandmother's gift to me. The rest of that Christmas dinner was a disaster. Dave quietly asked Jessica if they should leave. Robert demanded to see all the business documents immediately. Marcus sat in stunned silence, looking back and forth between his mother and me like he was watching a tennis match. But what happened in the days after was even worse. Patricia tried to defend her actions by claiming she was protecting the family's financial interests. She insisted the business was doing well and my inheritance was safely invested. When I demanded immediate return of the funds, she claimed it would take time to liquidate the investments without losing money. Marcus was caught in the middle and it was tearing him apart. She's my mother, Soph, he kept saying. She raised me. She wouldn't intentionally hurt anyone. But she did hurt me, Marcus. She took my grandmother's gift and used it without my permission. How is that not intentional? The legal battle took 6 months. I had to hire a lawyer. I couldn't afford to fight for money that should have already been mine. Patricia's business was indeed legitimate, but that didn't matter. She'd used funds that weren't hers to invest without the owner's consent. That's theft, no matter how you dress it up. During those 6 months, our marriage nearly ended. Marcus felt like he had to choose between his mother and his wife. Some days he supported me completely. Other days he'd suggest maybe I was overreacting, that family should work things out privately. The breaking point came when Patricia tried to offer me a settlement of half the inheritance amount to avoid further family conflict. She wanted me to accept $250,000 and call it even, essentially paying me to keep quiet about what she'd done. She's treating you like you're the problem, Jessica told me during one of our coffee meetings. Like you're being unreasonable for wanting your own money back. Jessica had become my strongest ally in the family. She was furious that her mother had hidden significant assets while refusing to help with her basic expenses. Do you know how many nights I've stayed awake worrying about money while Mom was sitting on $500,000? She asked. Robert was devastated. He'd discovered that Patricia had been making major financial decisions without consulting him for months. The trust in their marriage was broken in ways that might never heal. I thought I knew my wife, he told me privately. 31 years of marriage, and I find out she's capable of taking money from her own daughter-in-law and lying about it for months. Who is this person I've been living with? If you're watching this, and you've ever had to stand up to family members who violated your trust, let me know in the comments how you handled it. Sometimes the people closest to us are the ones who hurt us most, and I want you to know you're not alone in these struggles. Eventually, Patricia's lawyer advised her to settle. The evidence was overwhelming, and fighting it would only cost more money and potentially result in criminal charges. I got my full inheritance back, plus interest and legal fees. But the cost to our family relationships was enormous. Marcus and I went to counseling to work through the damage this situation had caused to our marriage. It took months of therapy for him to understand why I'd felt so betrayed, not just by his mother, but by his initial reaction to defend her actions. I couldn't see it because I didn't want to see it, he admitted during one of our sessions. It was easier to believe you were overreacting than to accept that my mother could do something so wrong. 1 year later, our family gatherings looked very different. Patricia and Robert were separated and considering divorce. Patricia's business had failed, partly because of the legal costs and partly because her reputation in their social circle was destroyed. Jessica had used some of her teaching savings to get her own place, finally free from depending on parents who might or might not help her. Marcus and I were stronger than we'd ever been, but it had taken almost losing everything to get there. We'd learned that marriage means standing together against anyone who tries to harm your partnership, even if that person is family. Most importantly, I'd learned to trust my instincts and fight for what was right, even when it was easier to stay quiet. Today, as I'm recording this story, it's been 18 months since that Christmas dinner changed everything. I'm sitting in the art studio I was finally able to set up with part of Grandma Eleanor's inheritance money. The walls are covered with paintings I've created over the past year, vibrant pieces full of color and life that reflect how far I've come. The $500,000 allowed me to pay off my student loans completely. Marcus and I bought our first house, a cozy place with big windows that flood my studio with natural light. But more than the financial security, that inheritance gave me something even more valuable, the confidence to stand up for myself. Marcus and I are planning our own Christmas traditions now. We've learned that sometimes loving someone means protecting your relationship from toxic family dynamics, even when those dynamics involve people you care about. Patricia and Robert's divorce was finalized 6 months ago. Patricia moved to a smaller apartment across town and works part-time at a department store. The woman who once commanded social circles and made financial decisions for everyone around her now struggles with the consequences of her choices. I don't take pleasure in her downfall, but I also don't feel guilty about pursuing what was rightfully mine. Grandma Eleanor left me that money because she wanted me to have opportunities and security. Letting someone else steal it would have been a betrayal of her love and sacrifice. Robert comes to our house for dinner sometimes now. He seems lighter, like a weight has been lifted from his shoulders. I spent so many years wondering why I felt like I was walking on eggshells in my own home, he told me recently. Now I know it wasn't my imagination. Jessica thrives in her independence. She got a promotion at her school and started dating someone new, a man who supports her dreams instead of making her feel small. Watching you stand up to Mom showed me I could do it too, she said. I don't have to accept being treated badly just because someone is family. The most healing part has been my relationship with Marcus. We're partners now in ways we never were before. He learned to see his mother's behavior clearly, and I learned to trust that he would choose our marriage over family pressure. We're planning to start a family of our own next year. But this experience taught me lessons that go far beyond money or family drama. It showed me the importance of trusting your instincts when something feels wrong. It proved that sometimes the people who seem most trustworthy are the ones taking advantage of that trust. And it demonstrated that standing up for yourself, even when it's difficult, is always worth it. If you're dealing with family members who've violated your boundaries or taken advantage of your kindness, I want you to know something important. You have the right to protect yourself and your interests, even if it makes other people uncomfortable. You don't owe anyone your silence about their bad behavior just to keep peace. Have you ever had to choose between family harmony and doing what's right for yourself? Drop a comment and share your story. Sometimes we need to hear from others who've been in similar situations to know we're not alone. Also, if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps other people find these stories when they need to hear them most. And subscribe for more real stories about family dynamics, financial betrayal, and finding the strength to stand up for yourself when it matters most. One thing I learned from Grandma Eleanor was that money isn't just money. When someone leaves you an inheritance, they're giving you their hopes for your future. They're saying they believe in you and want you to have opportunities they might not have had. Protecting that gift isn't just about the dollars and cents. It's about honoring the love behind it. I keep a photo of Grandma Eleanor in my studio now. Sometimes when I'm painting, I talk to her about the colors I'm choosing or the story I'm trying to tell with my brushstrokes. I think she'd be proud that her final gift helped me find my voice as an artist and as a person who won't be taken advantage of. What about you? Have you ever had to fight for something that was rightfully yours? Share your story in the comments below. We're stronger when we support each other through these challenges. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, trust your instincts, stand up for yourself, and never let anyone convince you that protecting your interests makes you the bad person.